I resolved. May 20th, 1775, 250 years ago, a rabble-rousing group of revolutionaries are said to have put pen to paper right here in Mecklenburg County. It was a declaration to absolve ourselves from all allegiance to the British crown. They said we are a free and independent people. It was a full year before a similar proclamation was made in Philadelphia.
Resolve that we, the citizens of Mecklenburg County, do hereby dissolve the political bands which have connected us to the mother country.
The public reading of the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence was recreated in Uptown this afternoon. Big crowd came out to celebrate our place and role in the revolution that was to come. Now, some of the details and authenticity of the Meck Dec have been disputed and debated, but there is no doubt the movement to free our nation from the king was very much fermenting in the area. A lot of it happening right here at Sugar Creek Presbyterian Church. And the man fanning the flames of rebellion was a preacher here named Alexander Craighead.
Alexander Craighead is a famous, or maybe infamous, person who was a preacher who took on the very strong covenanter religion of the Presbyterians and said very strongly that any individual is responsible only to themselves and their God. And therefore, if any other outside organization says that they should do something that's against their conscience, they can ignore that organization. Now think what that means. If that's a political organization. If you think what the king is doing is wrong and it's against your conscience, you may ignore the king.
So this man was a radical for his time, correct?
Very radical.
Did that put him at risk at times as well?
Very much. He was thrown out in a number of places.
So how did he end up here?
This is the backwoods where nobody listens. Actually, that's the truth.
Yeah.
No one was here to tell him no. There was no bishop, there was no oversight. He came in and he did what he wanted to do.
And he did. Sarah Sue Hartinger has teamed up with Laura Alexander Elliott to tell the story of Craighead and the other Mecklenburg revolutionaries in a new book entitled One Day Revolution. The title comes from the swiftness in which that declaration was written. It was done just hours after word got to Charlotte that British soldiers had clashed with the American militia at Lexington and Concord.
The people bet on May 19th, thinking what they were really going to do is just send a message to the governor to say things are wrong here, we want things differently, this is what we want. In comes this express writer in the afternoon, says people have been killed at Lexington and Concord by the British Army. Flip. All right, that's too much, we're just going to throw you away. Write it overnight, sign it in the morning, and by noon the next day, we had a revolution. That's one day.
Were they representing the majority? Was this a big group of revolutionaries who were on board?
Well, we've looked at where the militia met, and most of them met at churches. That was a good gathering place. And we looked at where the churches were and where the people came from. And it's a pretty good distribution across the whole of Mecklenburg County.
Was there a British presence here at that time?
No, none.
So they kind of had this to themselves, to have these discussions without the fear that maybe they were facing in the Northeast?
There were official judges and sheriffs that were appointed through the chain of command from the governor, but that was the only presence of the British here.
Talk more, though, about that personal risk that they were taking, having these conversations, to basically to throw out a government that was, in charge at that point.
That's right. Who was it? Some movie they says, I'm going to go over and talk a little treason. That's what they did. And yes, they did know it was treason, because the next morning, even McNitt, Alexander, wakes up and says, that was a bit rash on our part.
Yeah.
But clearly the governor found out about it because he sent word to Britain that it had happened, and he thought it was the most treasonous thing that had ever happened in this country.
That's punishable by?
Death.
So that was risk, no question.
Was a huge risk.
No question about it.
They basically signed their death warrant.
They did. How important is it still, 250 years later, to learn this history?
I think this is who America is. If you understand that the people, for the people, by the people, if the people can say, this is the way it should be, I want it this way, I have the right to make it this way, I have just made it that way. If you understand that, you understand American civics.
And you can learn more by reading more. One Day Revolution, available at local bookstores and also on Amazon.